We all chase it, right? That feeling of satisfaction, like, yeah, this is good. This is what I was hoping for. But what if I told you where you come from, like your background, plays a bigger role in how satisfied you actually end up feeling, way more than we might realize. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
Sounds intriguing.
Right. So get this. We're looking at this super interesting study. The title's a mouthful, though. It's in French. Convenir du Sud favorise la satisfaction personnelle.
Okay, for those of us who don't speak French.
Basically, it means when coming from the South promotes personal satisfaction. Catchy, right?
Definitely piques my curiosity.
So it's all about these new recruits, fresh faces at Doctors Without Borders, those folks doing crazy important aid work, often in really tough situations.
Right, putting themselves on the front lines.
Exactly. And you might think, going into it, that everyone in that kind of high-pressure, often dangerous job would feel, I don't know, kind of the same level of stressed out but well-meaning,
Yeah, a shared sense of purpose, but definitely under pressure.
Exactly. But here's the plot twist. This study found some huge differences in how satisfied these aid workers were. And the kicker is, it all seems to trace back to where they're from.
Oh, wow. That is fascinating. It really challenges our assumptions, doesn't it?
Totally. And before we even get into who's more satisfied and all that, I'm curious, how do you even measure satisfaction? Isn't that different from just like being happy?
Oh, absolutely. Think of satisfaction as less about like a fleeting emotion and more about how you judge your experiences overall. It's way deeper than a quick, hey, are you happy kind of survey. This study, it really digs into how content people are with their whole situation.
Okay, so how they figure that out? Were there like questionnaires or did they bring out the mood rings? What was the method here?
Thankfully, no truth serum or mood rings were involved, but the way they went about it is actually really interesting. So instead of just straight up asking people, hey, how satisfied are you? The researcher, they analyzed the specific words people used when they were describing their experiences.
Well, that's clever. It's like our subconscious is giving away the real deal, even if we don't realize it ourselves. You're telling me word choice is like a secret code to our true feelings.
Exactly. It's a really fascinating window into people's genuine feelings and experiences. And what they found through this analysis, well, it's pretty surprising.
All right, lay it on me.
Hmm.
What's the word on the street, or rather in these aid workers' vocabularies? Who's got that satisfaction secret sauce?
Well, get ready for a curveball, because this is where it gets really interesting. The study found that aid workers who came from the Global South often, not always, but often, reported higher levels of satisfaction. Kind of unexpected, right?
Yeah, I did not see that coming. You'd think that line of work, no matter where you're from, would come with a certain level of, like, baseline stress, challenges. So why the difference? What makes folks from the Global South seemingly more content?
It seems to come down to two major things: expectations and perspective. The study, it talks about these focused expectations. Basically, those who uprooted their whole lives, made big sacrifices to do this aid work, were actually more prone to feeling let down.
Makes sense. Higher the hopes, harder the fall, right?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So who were these individuals, the ones more likely to end up disappointed?
Often, the study suggests they were from the global north, driven by, maybe a really strong sense of idealism, wanting to make a difference on a global scale. But those good intentions, they can sometimes paint a very specific picture of what this experience should look like, which isn't always how the messy reality of humanitarian work goes.
So even with the best intentions, reality can still hit you in the face.
Exactly. Now, compare that with aid workers coming from the global south. This often wasn't some huge career jump for them, more like a continuation of the work they were already doing, just maybe with more resources on a larger platform.
So their expectations were shaped by a totally different playing field, like a more grounded view right from the start.
Right on. And that leads us to the second key thing: perspective. The study found that the difference in people's material starting points, it played a big part in how they viewed their satisfaction. See, for a lot of these aid workers from the Global South, this job meant a certain level of security, stability that they might not have had consistently before. A steady paycheck, safe housing, access to health care.
Things a lot of us might take for granted even.
Absolutely. So even though the work was demanding, no doubt about it, that baseline of their experience, it was higher. It's like this powerful reminder that what we consider good, it's all relative. What's essential to one person could be a total luxury somewhere else in the world. And that difference in perspective, it can really impact how we experience things, when you say.
So we've got these aid workers all in it to make a difference, right? But where they come from plays a huge role in how satisfied they are with the work. But hold on, there's another layer to this whole thing. It's not just about where you're coming from, but how you deal with being there, navigating the whole thing. What'd they find about that?
Okay, so this is where it gets even more interesting. The study found that the people who were, quick to point out what they saw as flaws, to question decisions really early on, they were actually less satisfied overall.
Whoa, now that is kind of wild. You'd think that speaking up would be the way to, make positive change, maybe even more satisfaction if things actually improve.
Ugh.
So who were these folks? The ones who were like, are we really sure this is the best way to do this?
It all comes down to power dynamics, right? The ones who were most likely to kind of challenge those early decisions, they tended to be from the global north. And it gets into this whole concept called incorporated domination.
Okay, yeah. Gotta be honest, incorporated domination sounds a little intense. Break that down for me.
It's actually simpler than it sounds. Just imagine all those past experiences we have with power, with privilege, with being the ones who usually call the shots. It kind of gets embedded in us, It shapes our behavior without us even realizing it. It's wild.
So it's like, if you're used to being heard, to having some authority, you're going to speak up when you see something that seems off. Makes sense.
Exactly. People from the global north, they might have more experience in those leadership roles, being comfortable advocating for change. It's part of their background. So in this new environment, doing aid work, they might be quicker to question decisions because, well, that's just what they're used to doing.
But then that's what throws me the whole less satisfied part. If you come from a world where speaking up usually leads to positive change, wouldn't you be more content, not less?
Yeah, it's not always a straight line, because challenging the way things are, even with the best intentions, it can cause friction. And if those challenges aren't met with the response you're expecting, well, it can create frustration.
Ah, so it's like you're running into a wall when you're used to just, opening doors. Yeah, that would definitely mess with your satisfaction levels. But for the aid workers who came from the global south,
They might see those power structures in a totally different light. The study, it actually found that they were more likely to trust the organization's decisions, focus on what was positive about the work, even if everything wasn't, perfect. It's not about who's right or wrong here. It's about how all our different backgrounds shape how we approach these situations.
okay, so for those of us listening, trying to find a little more satisfaction in our own lives, what's the big takeaway here?
It's a good reminder that all our past experiences, where we come from, it all gets baked into what we expect from the world.
Hmm.
How we define success, how we handle those power dynamics, even how we decide what good really means. It's all influenced by our own unique background.
It's deep and kind of freeing, don't you think? To know about this satisfaction paradox. It's not just about chasing some perfect ideal out there. It's about understanding how our own lens shapes everything.
Absolutely. It gives you the power to really ask yourself, are my expectations actually working for me? Are they based on my reality, my values? That's huge.
This has been mind-blowing, I gotta say. Big thanks to our expert for unpacking all this with us. And to all of you listening, next time you're wrestling with a decision, big or small, think about those expectations we've been talking about. Where did they come from? And are they really yours? Until next time, keep diving deep into those fascinating corners of the world and never stop questioning.